Happy Sunday, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Mind-Altering Substances in the Ancient World. I am your host, Brian Gramajo, and today we will be taking a deep dive into ancient Latin America and magic mushrooms. So let's not waste any time and get right into it. Latin America is rich in culture, food, and history. In many American public schools across the country, the full extent of what is taught about Latin American history ranges from Christopher Columbus to the Mexican-American War. But ancient Latin America reaches way past that. Like many other ancient civilizations, many civilizations throughout Latin America used mind-altering substances, like mushrooms, for example. Three of the more famous, less known ancient cultures from Latin America are the Mayas, Incas, and Aztecs. All three had their experiences with different types of mind-altering substances, but for the purpose of this documentary, I will be specifically focusing on mushrooms and the way these three cultures utilized mushrooms. As early as 2000 BC, the earliest Maya civilization started to appear in the Guatemalan highlands. Trading networks expanded, forming bustling city-states across most of what is now Central America and Mexico. Animism was the religion they followed. The idea of animus is the conviction that every creature, place, and thing has a unique spiritual essence or soul. The Maya believed that everything was living, including plants, animals, rocks, rivers, weather patterns, human creations, and possibly even words. It is believed that the Maya religion evolved from shamanism to a level that featured a hierarchy of religious officials or priests who were assisted by other servants such as artisans and craftsmen. The Mayans had priests and shamans working side by side, but they had different roles within society. Priests work on calendars and ceremonial centers. However, shamans were known for healing and were known to have had their powers come from dreams and other vision-like experiences. Now the question is, could mushrooms have been the key to their healing abilities? Well, all throughout northern Guatemala, historians have found remnants of mushroom stones, and like the name implies, they are stone figures that are shaped like mushrooms. According to historians, hallucinogenic mushrooms were ritually consumed to create hallucinatory experiences during sacred healing ceremonies, and these mushroom stones, like the ones you see here, were used to grind these mushrooms into an edible state. Between about 1400 to 1533 AD, the Inca civilization emerged in ancient Peru. Eventually, their empire expanded from Quito in the north to Santiago in the south, in western South America. At the time, it was the biggest empire the Americas had ever seen, and the biggest in the entire world. Like the Mayan civilization, the Inca civilization used psychedelic mushrooms, but through different Incan artifacts, it can be inferred that the Incas used mushrooms mostly in their religious practices. The Metropolitan Museum in New York is home to a wealth of proof supporting this assertion. In the exhibit, a beaker shows what appears to be a tree of life made of mushrooms. A mushroom tree, possibly a tree of life, is shown on the side of the beaker. While it is unclear what this is used for, it still serves as a source of proof of mushroom use throughout the Incan world. An Incan tomb with mushrooms is also available. On its head, there is a crescent-shaped mushroom that resembles those on the heads of prominent Incan religious figures and may be a symbol of both spiritual and material right. The mushroom stipe is not like a conventional toomey. Instead, it is shaped like what appears to be an Amanita species. Amanita muscaria has not been documented to grow in Peru, and its traditional hosts are in the northern hemisphere. One theory in order to explain this is that the fungus was traded with nations farther north or Mesoamerica, where Amanita muscaria has been found to have been firmly ingrained into religious societies, like the Mayans, for example. Small world. The Mochi, a brand of Incas, were famous for their ceramics and amazing archaeological sites. They created pottery featuring distinct depictions of mushrooms sticking out of people's heads like the ones we see here. Of all the Peruvian cultures, they offered the most expressive, varied, and unmistakable proof that mushrooms were used and played a significant role in early Incan culture. They created incredible, lifelike depictions of individuals and ordinary life. As a result, Mochi art offers a unique view into the thoughts and customs of its people, which can be seen at the Peabody Museum in New Haven, Connecticut. Around the start of the 13th century, the Aztecs, who likely descended from a nomadic tribe in northern Mexico, arrived in Mesoamerica. The Aztecs established themselves as a dominating force in central Mexico from the magnificent capital city, Tenochtitlan. They created a complex system of social, political, religious, and commercial organization that by the 15th century had many of the city-states in the area under their authority. Mesoamerica's last great indigenous civilization came to an end in 1521 when invaders headed by the Spanish adventurer Herman Cortés forcibly toppled the Aztec Empire and took Tenochtitlan. All throughout Mexico, there is evidence that supports the use of hallucinogenic mushrooms within Aztec culture. However, judging from their artifacts, one can infer that mushrooms were seen in a darker light compared to the Mayans and Incas. Mushrooms used in special ceremonies by the Aztecs are mentioned by Spanish missionary Fray Bernardino. He called these mushrooms tenotical, which translates to meat of the gods. Mushrooms were considered sacred, and those who consumed mushrooms recreationally were punished by the gods. This right here can be found within the Harvard University Photo Archives, which is an ancient Aztec painting of the god of the underworld visiting a man who is consuming mushrooms recreationally. A statue of the Aztec god of flowers, Xochipilli, can be found at the National Museum of Anthropology in Mexico City, but today, modern archaeologists have interpreted the flowers on the statue as mushrooms rather than flowers. These two artifacts explicitly show the relationship between psilocybin mushrooms, which are naturally found in Mexico to this day. Which, by the way, this doesn't mean to start booking your flight to Mexico to go get your hands on these mushrooms, because consuming wild mushrooms can lead to sickness or even death. How fun. We have now met the unfortunate end to our tour of ancient Latin America, where through this documentary I hope to have broadened your knowledge about the history of Latin ancient culture. This is Brian Gramajo concluding this episode of Mind Altering Substances.